Welcome to Biggest Spoilars, the destination for exclusive spoilers, latest updates.
You'll recall that last month, the former WSB agent came convinced that her longtime persecutor Faison had cheated death and risen from the grave like his children, Nathan and Britt. But before she could set off to probe her nipping proposition, she set up herself chloroformed and dislocated to exactly the kind of creepy room in which you'd anticipate to find a hijacking victim. In the December 10th occasion, observers saw that Anna had been moved to slightly lower grungy lodgement. And that's when the reflective moment arrived. Pascal, who'd offered macarons to Sidwell and Deception's directors, also brought the same eyefuls to Anna. In other words, she's being held internee at Windermere. Obviously, Pascal isn't the smarts behind the operation. Dude nearly blew up Britt despite her being a precious asset. He's not the smarts of anything. But Sidwell, this is exactly the kind of trick he'd pull, especially if his mate in crime is one of General Hospital's ignominious big evil. Is Jerry Jacks back in action? Has Victor Cassadine gotten himself a new parcel on life? More likely, Anna is correct in her hunch that Faison has returned, or a member of Faison's extended family, anyway. Her abductor could well be Nathan with his late father's recollections implanted in his head. Nathan could also be, heaven prohibit, walking around with Peter's crooked brain rattling around in his head. Or maybe on the other side of that one-way glass is Faison himself, alive and well. Sure, Anna saw his cadaver in 2018. But we also saw Nathan's dead body. And Britt's. The rules that apply to real life simply don't have any place in Port Charles. What do you suppose is going on? General Hospital spoilers allude that there's a good chance Pascal will visit Anna Devane in her captivity, whereabouts unknown, at some point during the week of December 8th to 12th. A scene in General Hospital's daily exercise shows an unidentified man, matching Pascal's constitution, entering Anna's cell, as the counter-spy looks on. Anna seems exhausted by her dilemma in the clip, but the good news is that she'll eventually be back on oil, formerly again. GH suckers haven't seen Anna since she was abducted weeks agone. The veritably last scene shown of Anna before she exited stories were her being ambuscaded and chloroformed by someone unknown in her auto, only for observers to also see her in a cell. A man's voice, that mimicked Caesar Faison, swamped an intercom, drinking Anna to her new life as she screamed in horror. Since also, GH observers have wondered where Anna is, who has her, and if anyone in Port Charles will start to see red flags regarding her exposure. From the sounds of it, Colt will be given some sapience over the coming 5 days. Presuming Pascal is the man from the exercise entering Anna's cell, arrows could be pointing to the fact that the former police commissioner is at Windermere, or nearly on Ladle Island. After all, that's where Pascal resides as Jen Sidwell's butler. Still, is Anna in the manse or in a captivity nearly on the islet? The man entering Anna's captivity seems to be coming from the outside, where there's snow and pavement, so if she's on Ladle Island, she's nowhere near the house. Also again, she could be nearly on the outskirts of Port Charles, nowhere near Pascal's occupancy, and Sidwell's butler could be making diurnal passages to her, while also keeping an eye on her via videotape surveillance also, assuming that it's Pascal walking to see Anna at her cell. This must mean that Sidwell was behind her exposure. Sidwell is the person who signs Pascal's hires, so unless the butler has gone guileful, which seems largely doubtful at this point, also Jens has taken Anna. With that said, why has Sidwell abducted Anna? Was she starting to dig too deep into his affairs? Is it to cover his secret investor? Speaking of the secret investor, there's also a chance that Pascal isn't the man visiting Anna, and potentially, the riddle master is eventually revealed. General Hospital spoilers allude that GH suckers will hopefully get some of their questions answered during the week of December 8th to 12th, as Anna eventually returns to stories in an explosive fashion. In the suffocating darkness beneath the WSB's abandoned Eastern laboratory, the kind of cold, sterile chamber where secrets were meant to be buried and sins never confessed, the emotional baptism of truth, guilt, redemption, and fury began the moment Anna Devane pulled the trigger, ending Pascal's life in a split-second decision that would ripple across Port Charles like shockwaves from a detonated bomb, and as the echo of the gunshot faded into the metallic walls, Anna stood trembling, her breath sharp like broken glass in her throat, realizing she had crossed a line she once believed she'd never step over again, a line she had guarded her whole life as fiercely as her badge, her honor, and the fragile thread of goodness she still believed lived inside her despite decades of ghosts haunting her soul. And as Pascal's lifeless body slumped to the floor, his final smirk frozen in a grotesque curl that whispered all the threats. He never got to speak. Anna felt the first drop of metaphorical baptismal water fall from her tears onto the cold cement, baptizing the moment not with joy or renewal but with the terrible weight of consequence and the knowledge that the past, no matter how deeply buried, always clawed its way back into the present. Her hands shaking violently, she dropped the weapon, hearing it clatter like a judge's gavel sealing her fate, and as alarms blared overhead, screeching, accusing, screaming the arrival of armed agents she knew were seconds away, she whispered a prayer that sounded more like a confession, a desperate plea asking whatever divine force still believed in her to forgive what she had done, because even if Pascal had forced her hand, even if his death meant lives were saved, even if justice demanded it, she could not escape the fear curling around her heart that this act would define her in the eyes of those she loved. With blood pounding in her ears, Anna pivoted and ran, fleeing the laboratory before its secrets, her secret, swallowed her whole, racing down dim corridors lit by pulsing red emergency lights that cast her shadow against the walls like a fleeing ghost, and as she pushed through the back exit into the icy December night, she gasped for breath as if surfacing from drowning, realizing with terror that she had not simply ended Pascal's reign of manipulation and cruelty, she had set into motion an unstoppable chain of events that would shake the foundation of every relationship she held close, every fragile bond she had fought to rebuild since returning to Port Charles. Back at GH, the spiritual storm of the baptismal metaphor surged as news of a WSB breach circulated, sending whispers through the hospital like ripples in a holy font before a ceremony begins. And Elijah, a young intern who had never spoken to Anna but admired her legendary courage, murmured encouragement to an anxious nurse, insisting that whatever happened, whatever people were saying, Anna Devane was a survivor, a fighter, someone who protected others even when it cost her pieces of herself. But across the city, Valentine Cassadine stood stiffly by his penthouse window, gripping the edge of the frame so hard his knuckles turned bone white, his entire body trembling with the kind of dread that only love could inspire, because the moment he received the encrypted message, 5 chilling words that felt like a knife to the ribs, Anna killed Pascal and fled, something inside him shattered, and a quiet baptism of fear began to wash over him, drowning him in dread as he realized the woman he loved was now a fugitive, hunted by the very agency she once served. Valentine whispered her name like a prayer, like a plea, like a vow, and then cursed violently under his breath, promising that anyone who came after her would have to go through him first, a vow that felt as holy and binding as any oath spoken at an altar. In the mayor's office, Laura Collins stared at the breaking news alert from the WSB, feeling the painful tightening in her chest that always came when the people she loved were thrown into life-or-death chaos, and though she whispered her own encouraging words, "Anna will survive this, she always does," she could hear the tremor in her voice, the crack that betrayed her fear that this time was different. This time Anna wasn't being framed or cornered, this time Anna had done it. Yet even as Laura's faith wavered, Jordan Ashford stormed into the room, slamming the door behind her, her fury already boiling over as she hissed that if any WSB agents dared to step foot in Port Charles to bring chaos into her jurisdiction, she would fight them tooth and nail, because Anna was not a monster, they would not paint her as one. Meanwhile, Curtis risked a glance toward Jordan, sensing her rising storm, and whispered encouraging words meant to steady them both, reminding her that people made impossible choices in impossible moments, that sometimes surviving meant doing things you never thought you could, but Jordan, still burning with protective anger, growled that if Pascal pushed Anna into a corner, then he got exactly what he deserved. At the same moment, Sonny Corinthos, sitting in the back office of Pozzolos, received the same disturbing report from one of his surveillance contacts. Anna, a woman he respected deeply, was now considered armed, dangerous, and on the run, and Sonny's expression darkened as he leaned back, cigarette smoke swirling around his head like incense in a cathedral, muttering that if the WSB or any power-hungry bureaucrat tried to use Anna as a scapegoat or clean-up casualty, they'd answer to him personally, and in that vow was the unmistakable tone of a man used to giving warnings that weren't merely threats but promises sealed in blood. Across town, at Kelly's, Elizabeth overheard customers whispering about Anna's supposed crime, their judgment sharp and cruel, and she slammed her coffee pot down so hard the counter rattled, her voice breaking as she snapped at them to show respect for a woman who had saved countless lives, urging them to remember compassion before they condemned someone they didn't understand. And as Elizabeth stepped into the back room, her hands trembling, she whispered soft, encouraging words to herself, trying to swallow the fear that tangled in her stomach at the thought of Anna alone, hunted, terrified. In the WSB's Eastern Command Center, agents barked orders, screens flickered, and chaos swirled as commanders demanded Anna's capture, labeling her a rogue operative, a traitor, a liability. But in the far corner, an older agent who had trained Anna decades earlier shook his head, bowing it slightly like a man at a baptismal font, whispering to a younger, conflicted recruit that Anna Devane was not the villain here, that Pascal had been a ticking bomb in human form, and that the world was safer without him. Back in the woods on the outskirts of Port Charles, Anna stumbled through dead leaves and broken branches, her breath visible in icy clouds. The sting of winter air biting her cheeks as she replayed the moment of Pascal's death in her mind again and again, feeling the crushing weight of responsibility, guilt, fear, and the unbearable thought that she might have just lost everything, Valentine, her badge, her reputation, her future, and as tears blurred her vision, she whispered to the empty forest, "I didn't want to do it," as if hoping the trees themselves might absolve her. But even in that moment of raw vulnerability, she felt the flicker of something stronger rising inside her, the fierce, unwavering instinct that had carried her through decades of danger, survival. She couldn't stop now. She had to keep moving. She had to find a way to clear her name, even if she wasn't sure she deserved redemption. In another corner of town, Sam McCall listened to the developing reports with dawning horror, her heart pounding as she remembered every mission she had witnessed Anna undertake, every sacrifice, every painful confession Anna had ever made about her dark past, and Sam whispered emotionally charged encouragement to Dante, "We have to find her before the wrong people do," a vow laced with fear and determination, because she knew how quickly the WSB could erase someone they deemed inconvenient. Dante nodded, jaw clenched, already preparing angry, fiery threats for anyone who tried to harm Anna, his internal baptism of rage and devotion swelling like a rising tide as he promised that he would move heaven and earth to keep Anna alive. Meanwhile, at the Metro Court, Nina sat in stunned silence as she read the breaking story, her fingers trembling around her champagne flute, whispering a broken, trembling prayer for Anna's safety, while across from her, Ava smirked, a thin, brittle smirk hiding real concern, as she murmured that Anna Devane didn't run unless she had a damn good reason, and that anyone who pushed her was bound to regret it. Even Felicia, upon hearing the news, clasped her rosary in both hands and whispered Anna's name like a plea to heaven itself, understanding from decades of friendship that Anna would rather die than become the monster the world now feared she was. And though all of Port Charles trembled beneath the emotional storm, encouraging words rising like hymns, angry threats erupting like volcanic ash, fear and loyalty clashing in sacred fury, Anna kept running, each step a heartbeat, each breath a prayer, each tear a baptism in fire, until finally she reached the rocky shoreline overlooking the churning waters of the harbor, her chest heaving as she stared at the city lights shimmering in the distance, knowing that somewhere out there, the people she loved were praying for her, fighting for her, fearing for her. She closed her eyes, feeling the cold wind whip through her hair, and whispered a vow, raw, trembling, sacred, that she would not let Pascal's death be the end of her, nor the end of everything she had rebuilt. She would rise, no matter how far she had fallen, she would fight, even if her soul felt shattered, and as she pulled her coat tighter and disappeared into the shadows, her baptism of blood, guilt, courage, faith, and fury continued, marking the beginning of a new chapter in Port Charles. One where Anna Devane would either be redeemed, or destroyed. General Hospital spoilers and updates for Friday, December 12th. Tease that Dante Falconeri wants to know what to do with the new information regarding the night Drew Kane was shot. Harrison Chase stands his ground, and Jason Morgan makes a plea. Dante Falconeri's new information at the PCPD. Dante Mission's acting district attorney Justine Turner on the new information he and Nathan West set up on business cam footage. Dante asks her, with this new information, who do you want to go after? There could be any one of 3 vehicles that we know of on that footage, and conceivably at least one Rambler. We know that Michael Corinthos and Tracy Quartermain were in the vicinity, and Kai Taylor and Trina Robinson were in Drew's house. Plus, Willow Kane may have been in the vicinity on bottom. Harrison Chase stands his ground in the meantime. At the Quartermain manse, Chase stands his ground to Michael. Pertaining to Willow, he tells him he has no interest in coming between a mama and her kitties. Willow's not relatively in the clear yet, despite several other persons of interest in Drew's firing, since she has yet to be completely exonerated. Plus, with the guardianship hail presto approaching, Chase's aunt trying to win Willow's children back, he simply believes she's innocent. As for Michael, he doesn't believe Willow is safe alone with the kiddies, and he trusts Drew indeed less. And Wiley Corinthos told him he doesn't like Drew. Willow take Kane's where she shouldn't be. General Hospital spoilers for Friday, December 12th. Note that Brooklyn Quartermain will catch Willow where she shouldn't be. It's clear that she doubts Chase would have allowed Willow into the breakfast room at the manse, and yet, there she stands. Brooklyn tells her that she needs to leave, now. Plainly, if Chase had let her come into the manse with him, he and Michael would be having an entirely different discussion. Chase knows that Willow isn't allowed to see the kiddies until after the guardianship hail's outcome. Curtis Ashford's deal. Drew has come to kill Curtis Ashford in the PCPD jail. Curtis tries to make a deal with him. He'd mentioned that maybe the two could work together. Drew doesn't want Curtis to be doomed for his firing. He wishes it was Michael. But now, Curtis is giving Drew a warning if Curtis' life falls piecemeal. Also Drew's life falls piecemeal. What exactly do we then? Mutually blackmailing musketeers. Well, at least they used to be buddies. Jason Morgan's plea away. Jason makes a plea to Britt Westbourne. He tells her if she goes on with what he asks, she's going to be free from whoever's making her do all this. It sounds like Britt has opened up a little bit about what's going on in her life, who's supplying her Huntington's cure, and is blackmailing her with it. General Hospital observers know that Jen Sidwell is behind everything. That's who Jason is helping Sonny Corinthos fight. Now that Lucas Jones gave Britt a good recommendation for being rehired at GH as an OB/GYN after helping Portia Robinson, at least she's got options for work. Will Britt tell Jason everything so that he can help her get out from under Sidwell and Pascal's thumb? Be sure to catch up on everything passing with GH right now. Come back then frequently for General Hospital spoilers, news, and updates.